And I felt I want to do something different, something more sustainable for the planet, for nature, because I'm very connected to farms. As a child, I worked every weekend on a farm. So for me, that was respectless to cook like that. So I started to think about what's the pathway. I went to the hotel management school, and then I opened exactly 30 years ago now. This year's 30 years. I opened my first restaurant, and I didn't open the restaurant in a city. I went to the village. I said, I need to be close to the farms. 30 years ago there was no movement for organic. So I said, I go there where the farmers are. I need to talk to the farmers to transform agriculture towards organic production, sustainable production, and I want to give them access to market, buy the food from farm direct and cook with it. So I cooked farm to table, we call it today, or whatever, and that's the big vision, connecting to Nepal and to Tulsi. It's really taking what the market, the farmers produce, and make out of this a nice dish or a restaurant concept. So I started 30 years ago with that vision. And the second vision I always had is social inclusion. I don't want to exclude people in the society. So when I started my restaurant was the Balkan War in Yugoslavia. So a lot of refugees came, and I hosted 14 in my restaurant in the rooms, and I thought what to do, so I expanded my restaurant with events that they have jobs. So for me the social inclusion started there. That was a very important thing for me, always to have the ecological view of sustainability, but also the social. And out of this little intention, I built a big concept with 16 companies, and all of them have young people for education now. Young people what are a bit marginalized, what cannot access the labor market directly because they had problems or they were, they had needed some additional support. So we have 160 apprentices now, 16 companies in 16 different professions. I started with chefs for sure, because that was my competence. So, but today it's 16 companies, 16 different professions, and each company has a surrounding where they teach these young people as well. Then, for me, an important point was, then longer I was working in food systems and the systemic question and farming. Then more, for me, that question emerged. We need a different food system, really systemic. You already mentioned it, you started to talk about, so because in the whole world, 500 companies control 70% of the food flow nowadays. So when we buy from the big market here in Nepal as well, from India, from China, you mostly have someone behind from these 500 companies. It's 30% of the food flow is free, but 70% goes through these big channels, So for example, coffee is very typical, Switzerland, as a little country, 84% of the coffee trade goes to Switzerland. The big companies will trade coffee on the market. They say what the price for coffee is, they buy in a big scale, it's in Switzerland. So I said that's wrong somehow, we need to really interrupt it, and we need to have a different food system. And the system nowadays is, food is a commodity. We trade food, we go with food, market price, we deal with food. We have sometimes prices going up, prices going down, nobody knows why somehow, So that's not the view from my point of view, that we see that commodity in the food chain, we need different approaches. So I started to build networks where we focus not on the food itself, we focus on relationships. Who with whom is connecting farmers with chefs, for example. It's how it started. You did the same, I think I had a millet cookie.
Yeah,
it's amazing. I hope it's the millet from you can buy from here, I'm sure it is, because I always saw that millet around. It's amazing. So, we start to change the system from food flow through a chain to food flow between people. And this change, I think, from from chain to network, that was what inspired me to do everything I do nowadays. And one is I operate 5 shops as well in Zurich. We have different supply models we already approved, but always the focus was how to access for farmers the market, you know, not through that big chain, through different models. And the network model for me is one very important one. So now, one a day, I got an email from someone from Nepal. And he saw our website and he said, hey, I think you do it the same as my vision is, you know. And then a few months later, I met Tulsi in Switzerland. We sit together and we said we need to work together on that approach. That's why I come to Nepal. So we met through a vision, and the vision is to go towards these networks where we focus more on the relational part and less on the just food flow, you know. We struggled a lot, and a lot of people around the globe are trying to do the same like us, you know, because a lot of people realize we need to change this on a systemic level, the whole food system. And that made me connect to many people around the globe, since we work on food networks and hospitals, elderly homes, you know, to the public schools, primary. So that inspired me a lot, because I felt, oh wow, yes, that's something what could change the system from an angle where we also have influence. You know, if you have an individual company, I cannot come and tell you, you need to do that like that, yeah, like that, like that. But if we start in the state, in a different policy as well, you know, to say, yeah, let's do it different, that could be a big success. We spoke about that because here in Nepal we were already talking about these questions. How could school food meals improve in quality and in sourcing, especially, you know, your own with that food, you know. It's not the access. That access you have now. You produce, bakery, you can produce in the kitchen these meals. It's mass catering. So we have a certain amount where we also can support the farming, because that's the other point, you know. When I call a farmer as a chef with a little restaurant and say, hey, I would like to buy food from you, he says, yeah, but that's not very interesting for me, you know, to deliver you 10 kilo potatoes every day or every second day. It's very logistic-wise, it's heavy, and it doesn't make sense, you know. But if you can do that with a center like you organize here now, where you can channel the food and then deliver the food, I think that's super important. For me, another key, what is super important, and I was happy to visit your canteens yesterday, is you cook where the guests and customers are. It's very important. There are a lot of mass caterings, they do central production and they deliver the ready-made food. But I think for the children, for adults as well, it's important to see where the food is cooked. Probably it's because I'm a chef. I always feel we are always a little bit in the basement or behind the scene, you know, with the cooking. But people need to learn to cook. And, you know, I don't know how it is in Nepal, but our young people, some in Switzerland, some of them can't cook anymore. And I say, it's probably a bit provocative for a teacher, but I say it's as important cooking as mathematics for me, because we teach them a lot in math, in languages, in all these wonderful topics. It's important, the sciences, but cooking is a base where we change the world at the end. We change our health, the well-being. It's a very social aspect. We share food, we have food together, so it's such an important tool. So I feel cooking is important, and open your kitchen. And I saw yesterday in the canteen in Munipal, they came inside there and asked for food, the students, you know, it's great. They should have access to it's not allowed, I know, from hygienics, but I think it's good if people see what we do, if they can connect what we do, and they can learn from what we do. And I think that's a very important part. Yeah, so that's a bit my motivation, my why, and also where I see what we do here now is a very pioneers project, and I hope we are successful in that, and I'm sure we are. because we can really take it as a model and bring it to the world. I want to bring that in the communications out of Nepal to replicate in other countries, in other regions, but first we need to prove it works. So that's the first step.